So in case you haven't kept up with the news, Terminator Dark Fate has bombed and flopped in the box office. And I want to talk about this because although I am pretty much done talking about Terminator Dark Fate as a movie, I've done 3 videos on it already. I did a non-spoiler review and then a spoiler review and a discussion with Laughingstock Media / Laughingstock Cinema. I wanted to talk about what lessons can be learned from this because we have to, as movie fans, because I think people who watch these videos are legitimate movie fans and fans of Terminator, we really have to analyze this, and I feel like the major studios who are producing movies really need to look at this and learn from it. And I'm talking about everybody, including Disney. Disney is a machine when it comes to, making money, but the proof is right here in Terminator Dark Fate that if you continuously irritate and antagonize your audience, you could eventually end up losing your audience and having your audience lose faith in you. So, let me talk about this. And this is not about the movie, okay? I'm not going to go into any spoilers for the film here. I've already done so many videos on the movie already. I'm done talking about it. But let's talk about what could end up being the lesson learned here. So, Terminator 2 was, in 1991, the biggest movie of that year. Still to this day was considered one of the greatest films ever made. Terminator 1 from 1984 was fantastic, a classic movie. But Terminator 2 was even more beloved by the general population. Almost everybody that I've ever spoken to loves Terminator 2. In fact, I don't know a single person who does not like Terminator 2. And I'm not saying they don't exist. Of course they exist. But I don't know anyone in my friends group who does not absolutely love Terminator 2. And this movie made a lot of money. So, obviously, when it comes to studios seeing how much money it made, a sequel would only make sense. However, for a very long time, we did not get that sequel because James Cameron had said that he was done telling his story. T2 was the end of the story that he had envisioned. Now, obviously, we had the Terminator ride and we had merchandise and things like that come out, but T3 did not come out until a decade later, over a decade later. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's a bunch of stuff going on with film rights and Kuroko went under and a whole bunch of different things happened behind the scenes. But essentially, T2 was supposed to be the end. But studios are obviously money hungry and they want to capitalize on any franchise that makes them money, which is why we're getting 3 Avatar sequels very soon. And at least with that, though, James Cameron wants to work on them, from what we understand. So at least he's actually invested in that universe. When it comes to Terminator, he's done. So the key is not having the original creator on board. That's one thing that these people don't understand. James Cameron was a producer on Terminator Dark Fate, and yet he barely did anything. Like, he's just almost just there and just argued with Tim Miller, and there's a bunch of stories that went on, but they tried to hype it up like James Cameron is on board with this film. And if you've learned anything about James Cameron, you know that he sometimes says things that are not true. I mean, he straight up has lied in the past because he wants Arnold and Linda Hamilton and all his friends to make money. So he'll sit there and he'll endorse a movie like Terminator Genesis that everybody else dislikes, and he'll sit there and he'll endorse Dark Fate as being the true sequel to T2 when he doesn't even really feel that way. So you have to really not listen to what James Cameron says when it comes to endorsing films, because the guy has a very bad track record of saying this, right? But what's happened, if you really go back and analyze the sequels to T2, remember what I said. T2 was supposed to be the end of the story, right? Everything else added beyond T2, many consider to be glorified fan fiction. Now, I'm not one of those people who thinks that the original creator needs to be involved for something to be good. Some people actually consider the Star Wars sequels to be fan fiction, but if that's the case, then that would also make a lot of other things fan fiction too that people don't want to accept. Like the EU, for example, which was not written by George Lucas, most of the EU comic books and novels, but a lot of fans cling on to those as being canon, and that's fine, you can do that, but you have to understand, don't be a hypocrite about it, right? So the Terminator sequels were all essentially supposed to be cash grabs. T3 was only going to get equity because of T2 and T1. T4 was a follow-up to T3, but had all kinds of issues. And then when the ending leaked out, people were really irritated at it, and they changed the ending. Now, when a movie studio changes an ending to please an audience, that's usually a good thing. But when you look behind, beneath the surface, we're trying to get deeper into this right here, you come to realize that they did it because they wanted to make money. Movies are made to make money. There's obviously an artistic vision behind them. When you have a creator like a James Cameron or a George Lucas, he has a vision, but these things have to make money, and both those guys have made a lot of money in their life. They're both exceedingly wealthy. And that's good. Good for them. I mean, I'm fine with that. When you create iconic franchises, hey, retire on your ranch and do whatever you want. That goes for all of us too. If you're out there listening to this right now and you're a creative and you make something creative and it blows up, brother, you deserve your millions. Go, lay out on an island somewhere and enjoy your life. I am all for that. Good for them. But when the studios come in, right, it's no longer a passion project at that point. It's a committee. It's a group of people. It becomes corporate. So then we have Terminator Genesis, which was supposed to be a reboot, trying to do what Star Trek, J.J. Abrams movies did, sort of tying into the first film, but going in a different direction. And that movie was a complete mess, had a bunch of time travel problems. I actually liked it the first time I saw it, but I did walk out of the movie theater confused. And then when I watched it again, I realized, yeah, none of this makes any sense. It really doesn't. But the film was supposed to be the start of a new trilogy. And yet, same thing with Terminator Salvation. That was supposed to be the start of the Future War trilogy, which I was very excited about, and I wish they would have continued, and I wish they would have executed that, because I would have been perfectly fine with 3 Terminator films taking place in the present, I guess you can say, of the times, and then 3 in the future. That would have been great. I would have been fine with that. Even if Salvation wasn't the best movie, they could have made better ones, and it could have been a fine trilogy. Didn't have to be a masterpiece, just good enough, But instead, they rebooted with Genesis. It didn't get a good fan reception, and they canceled the sequels. And so at that point, many of us thought that Terminator was done. I mean, I certainly did. I was hoping they would maybe make another movie and answer some of these questions that were raised in Genesis that never got answered. But we're never going to get an answer to those questions. We're never going to know who it was that sent Pops back to the 70s to save Sarah Connor from a T-1000, which totally changed the entire timeline. We're never going to have an answer to that question unless the writers actually tell us, which whenever a writer gets interviewed and gives us an answer to something, I'm always very skeptical. I just made it up on the spot. But, again, you know how it is. You've heard these interviews before. So that flopped. Not flopped. I mean, it did well, but it didn't do what they wanted to do. And then Terminator Dark Fate comes around. We've got Tim Miller, who directed Deadpool, really popular movie, comes in, makes another movie to reboot the franchise. And not a legit reboot, more of a soft reboot to say, okay, we're going to have a new trilogy now. Because make no mistake, Dark Fate was supposed to be part of a new trilogy. The story of Danny Ramos or whatever, and Sarah Connor, I guess, whatever they were going to do. I don't want to spoil the movie, but the story of that character and, what was going to happen in this different world or whatever you want to call it, this new series of events, was supposed to be its own trilogy, and now it flopped. And the reason why this movie flopped is not because the movie was not a good movie. There have been tons of movies that have made tons of money that are not good movies. The reason why Terminator Dark Fate flopped is because of the fact that the fans had no faith in the franchise anymore. When you give the fans T3, which was a letdown, T4, which was an awkwardly weird movie, but different, I'll give it that, Terminator 5, Genesis, which was really, really angered a lot of fans, and then now you have Terminator 6, Dark Fate, which there was already some bad publicity with it, with the whole woke stuff, and, people heard about the spoiler, the major one, the first part of the movie, the first 3 minutes of the movie or 5 minutes or whatever, that leaked on the internet. It was legitimate. People were very disgusted by it. People were more invested in other franchises, and that's why this movie flopped, because even with Arnold and Linda Hamilton back, Arnold's a huge star. People have lost faith in the franchise. When you give them bad movie after bad movie after bad movie, and then you continue to invest a large budget in this franchise, there's going to come a point where people say enough is enough and they stop going to your movies. You would think that this would never happen with Star Wars or Marvel, but it could happen. It genuinely could happen. I mean, let's look at X-Men, for example. X-Men Dark Phoenix got a really bad kind of fan. It wasn't very well liked, right? Same thing with Apocalypse. I think if they would have put out one more movie, it could have probably flopped. If they put out one more, if it had a bad word of mouth. Because remember, Dark Fate, before it even came out, had bad word of mouth. And that's never a good thing. So, and again, I didn't even hate the movie. I thought it was pretty fun. It just was irritating at times. I'm not going to get into it. I talked about it already in the spoilers. So, the reality is, if you screw over the fans of your franchise time and time again, people are going to get sick of it and move on. And it's going to be a lot harder for that to happen with something like Star Wars, because there's a lot of equity there, and people just love that universe so much, myself included. So it's going to be hard to actually get to that point with Star Wars, but it's not impossible. If they keep making bad choice after bad choice after bad choice, it could happen. Marvel, on the other hand, has all kinds of equity. With the MCU, it's going to take many bad movies for it to go down, and that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I think the MCU is the healthiest film franchise going right now, point blank. Because like I said, it'll take a lot for them to screw it up and for the fans to be mad. But with Terminator, I mean, and also doing constant reboots. See, at least with Star Wars, they're not erasing stuff. With these movies, they're like, okay, well, the last movie didn't count. Oh, well, the last two didn't count. Oh, the last three didn't count. No, people get tired of that. Like, you're sitting there and you're jerking around people's money. I'm spending money to go see a movie because I want to see if it counts. I'm not a big canon guy. You know, as you know, if you follow me on Dragon Ball, canon's not important to me, but people care about, you know, am I going to invest my time in something that's going to get followed up on? And when you have Salvation that had a great ending but no follow-up, then you have Genesis that had no follow-up, and now this movie that's going to have no follow-up because it flopped. Why would anybody spend money in this franchise? It's not even about canon. It's about, like, are you going to tell us the full story, or are we going to get the first chapter of it and then get screwed again, and we're going to get screwed again? You're screwing around with the audience, dude, and they don't even realize it. They should have waited more. I think they should have waited longer before putting this movie out, but again, maybe Linda Hamilton would have been too old, or I mean, I don't think so, but either way, it doesn't matter. I still feel like that's why this movie flopped, because you lost equity with the fans. So I really hope that studios look at this and realize the problems with Terminator Dark Fate and with the entire Terminator franchise, and they realize that the real issue here is losing faith, is having your fans lose faith in you. And when that happens, that's it. Like, it's very hard to come back from that, as we can see here. So it's a lesson that needs to be learned from these studios. They really need to be. Anyways, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you agree. If not, leave a comment. If you do, also leave a comment. Appreciate it. Like the video, share it out, and I'll talk to you soon.